Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon when you're watching this, and welcome to another story time. It is a beautiful day in the mountains where I live. It's kind of warm, but not too warm. It feels like spring, but I can tell summer is coming. And that made me decide to read two special books to you, things about the summer that is coming. I know that right now we are not able to go to the beach and we're not able to go camping and do some of those fun summer things, but we will be able to soon. So when we read this book today, actually these two books today, I want you to think about how much fun is coming with summer. Remember, as everyone's saying right now, we're all in this together and we will all get through this together with God's help. So here we go. I have two stories for you, like I mentioned. The first one is A Camping Spree with Mr. Magee by Chris Van Dusen. Our second one is also by Chris Van Dusen, and it's also Mr. Magee. It is Down to the Sea with Mr. Magee by Chris Van Dusen. And so these books are read with the permission of Chronicle Books. And there are other Mr. Magee books that you can get. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them at Barnes & Noble. You can find them, hold on, let me see where else they said, Bookshop, and also at Chronicle Books. So if you enjoy Mr. Magee, go and look for those other books. So here we go. We're going to start with A Camping Spree with Mr. Magee. And if you have, if your reading level is in the 3.8 range, this book has an AR quiz in the 3.8 range for you. So here we go. A Camping Spree with Mr. Magee. Early one morning at 7:03, Mr. Magee and his little dog Dee packed up the camper and hitched up the load, hopped in the Rambler, and then hit the road. They drove to the mountains far from the sea for 2 nights of camping, or possibly 3. "There's nothing like camping," said Mr. Magee. "I know you will love it. Just you wait and see. The views are fantastic. There's hardly a sound. Aside from the wildlife, there's no one around. And the air is so sweet you'll sleep like a log," said Mr. Magee to his small spotted dog. A few hours later, they took a sharp right and found a great spot to lay camp for the night. It was high on a hill with a beautiful view of Mount Adams, Mount Lincoln, and Jefferson too. But perhaps the most wonderful feature of all was the brook that ran over a steep waterfall. Dee gathered pine cones and branches and logs. Magee made a campfire and cooked some hot dogs. And as the sun set behind far distant knolls, they sat roasting marshmallows over the coals. As the embers went out, they felt tired and dozy, so they climbed in their bunk beds all comfy and cozy. But while they were falling asleep without care, along came a stumbling, bumbling bear. A kindly old bear whose sight wasn't so clear. He couldn't see far, and he couldn't see near. But he could smell marshmallows, sticky and sweet. This smell made him hungry. He wanted a treat. He sniffed out the place where the marshmallows lay, but the car and the camper were in the bear's way. Yet that didn't stop the sneaky old snitch. He simply tried squeezing right under the hitch. And as he was shimmying into the gap, he pushed up the hitch, which let go with a snap. Now that the camper and car were untied, they started to roll down the rocky hillside. The car bounced away on the old logging road, while the camper was heading to where the stream flowed. It flew down the hill in a wild, bumpy ride, with Dee and Magee sleeping soundly inside. Sorry for the noise. The wind pushed my paper a bit. They were snorting and snoozing, enjoying a dream, when splash went the camper right into the stream. The splash shook the camper. They bumped out of bed. "Now what in the world was that?" Magee said. And when he looked out and saw where they were, his hair stood on end, and so did Dee's fur. They were caught in the rapids, but that wasn't all. They were headed smack dab for the big waterfall. Dee and Magee both started to quiver as faster and faster they headed down river. But just when they thought they'd fall over the edge, the camper got stuck on a rock at the ledge. So there they were, stranded, Magee and his pup, on the top of a waterfall, 50 feet up. Meanwhile, that nearsighted bear from before was searching for one little marshmallow more, when lo and behold, as if out of a dream, he spied something sweet floating over the stream. But what the bear thought was a marshmallow treat was really the hitch and not something to eat. Do you see that? It kind of does look like a marshmallow, doesn't it? But it's really part of the trailer. The bear was determined to capture his prize, so he jumped in the water right up to his thighs. He splashed through the stream to the edge of the fall and snatched up the trailer hitch, camper and all. Oops, sorry. Dee felt a tug. Magee heard a knock as the bear pulled the camper right off of the rock. He dragged them both all the way back to the bank when he realized the hitch was not sweet but quite rank. He spit out the hitch and left in dismay, while Magee and Dee's camper again rolled away. It flew down the path with a jolt and a jar and stopped in some bushes right next to the car. Dee popped her head out. Magee looked out too. Had they really stopped rolling? Could it be true? At last things were quiet and peaceful and still. They hooked up the hitch and drove off down the hill. And on the way home, Magee said to Dee, "Ooh, that trip wasn't quite like I thought it would be." So when they got home with the sky turning red, they decided to camp in the backyard instead. The end. Now that wasn't quite like any camping trips that I've had, but it sure sounded fun and exciting. So our next book, Down to the Sea with Mr. Magee. Going to the beach is one of my favorite things to do, and I really look forward to that happening again. So let's read this one, Down to the Sea with Mr. Magee by Chris Van Dusen, and this book is in the 4.2 AR level. So here we go, Down to the Sea with Mr. Magee. Mr. Magee and his little dog Dee loved spending time in their boat on the sea. So early one morning at 6:32, they made a decision. That's just what they do. Right after breakfast, Magee packed a lunch. Sandwiches, carrots, a thermos of punch, a big box of raisins, some sweet pickled beets, chocolate chip cookies, and crunchy dog treats. With plans for the day and enough lunch for 3, they hopped in the car and drove down to the sea. Fun? Oh, that sea looks so inviting. The pair left the dock at 7 o'clock and motored their way around Eagle Egg Rock. They passed by the lighthouse and by the old wreck, with Magee at the wheel and Dee on the deck. See that? They suddenly spied off the bow to the east a big pot of whales. There were 50 at least, splashing about in the bright morning sun, feasting on shrimp and sardines by the ton. But one little whale, who had eaten his fill, munching on minnows and plankton and krill, was bored with his breakfast, and since he was through, he swam off in search of something to do. Well, look at that. Can you see? That's a big picture with a lot of shadows. See that? Now Dee and Magee in their boat on the bay didn't notice the whale that was heading their way. They were watching the other whales put on a show, and soon that young whale was directly below. From under the sea the little whale spied Magee and Dee's boat, but not them inside. He longed for adventure. He wanted to play. So he bumped at the boat in a most friendly way. Then the whale placed his blowhole directly below, and ever so gently, he started to blow. Magee saw the bubbles. He felt the boat sway. Then up went the boat on a fountain of spray. Higher and higher the little boat flew, as harder and harder that little whale blew. Then the whale blew a blast as hard as he could, much harder, in fact, than a little whale should. And that final blast blew the boat up in the sky, first 30, then 40, then 50 feet high. The boat kept on rising, but it didn't stop there. Wind hit it hard, and it flew through the air. Dee and Magee sailed over the sea, when all of a sudden, let's find out, they got stuck in a tree. So there they were stranded, Magee and his pup, in the top of a spruce, 60-something feet up. See them? Way up there. From their perch in the sky, the two watched in dismay as the whale far below swam swiftly away. Magee was downhearted. Just what could he do? They seemed hopelessly stuck. But little Dee knew. The secret to get the boat safely unpinned was to rock back and forth and wait for the wind. So they rocked and they rocked for an hour or so, but the boat didn't budge, 'cause the wind didn't blow. Just when they thought they'd be stuck there all night, they spotted far off a spectacular sight. Away in the distance across the blue bay, the whales, all 50, were heading their way. They swam through the water in one long straight row and gathered around the small island below. Magee looked down at the circle of whales surrounding the island and raising their tails. He felt a bit nervous, a little bit tense, when all of a sudden it made perfect sense. "They're trying to save us," he shouted with glee. "Hold on, Dee, hold on as tight as can be." Their tails slapped down with a thunderous crash, which in turn created a super high splash that covered the island and raced up the tree and dislodged the boat and set the boat free. Set them both free. Dee was so happy she let out a yelp. Magee tipped his hat to the whales for their help. "Thank you, my friends, for saving the day." Then they all waved goodbye, and the whales swam away. On the way home, little Dee had a thought. What about all the food they had bought? In all the excitement, they ate not a bite. So they saved it and had it for dinner that night. I really like these books. I love the illustrations, the drawings. I love all the color. And I really love the fun and excitement that Mr. Magee and his little doggie had. So I hope you enjoyed it too. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.